To the latest on the federal budget, and the Liberals have pitched this as leading to some generational investments. But how will the budget actually impact Canadians of all generations? For example, Paul Kershaw is joining us live. He's the founder of Generation Squeeze. He's in Ottawa this morning. Paul, what's your assessment, of this budget yesterday when it comes to Generation Squeeze? Because that covers a whole lot of Canadians these days, as many of us feel squeezed.
Well, heading into the budget, we know that the Prime Minister foreshadowed that this would be a moment of sort of shared sacrifice for the national good. And rightly, Mr. Poilievre had been pointing out in advance that younger people have been doing a disproportionate amount of the sacrificing, paying higher rents, larger mortgages, and a difficult job market, thereby protecting some of the inflated property values that older people like me are banking on. So I'd expected the budget to actually provide equal distribution of sharing in 2025. But I left somewhat disappointed, and let me give you some numbers to make clear why. When I look at how different line items in the budget are going to grow, old age security is going to get an extra $28 billion of annual spending by 2029. That's a very large sum of money. And how do I know that? Because by comparison, housing is going to get less than $2 billion. Post-secondary will get less than $2 billion. Childcare will get close to $3 billion. And youth employment will get less than $1 billion. And so you can see when it comes to putting our money where our mouth is, the top priorities for younger people are typically getting less than what's happening later in the life course. And we absolutely want to be helping those who are economically vulnerable in their retirements. But one thing that frustrates me about old age security, and I think it'll frustrate some of your younger listeners as well, is that we are sending $18,000 subsidies to retired couples that have $182,000 in annual income already. And most Canadians don't have $182,000 annual incomes. And right now, I think we need to be asking, in these tight times, these tough times, is that the best use of our tax dollars? Couldn't we better use some of those dollars to eliminate seniors' poverty and help younger Canadians?
Yeah, it's interesting,
with their affordability issues.
Frequently there's a saying in politics, show me your budget and I'll know your priorities here. It's pretty clear, it seems then, from this, where the Liberal government's priorities are. But part of this, Paul, does come down to politics too, doesn't it? I mean, it's generally speaking, older generations vote more than the younger generations. So there is that sort of, governments go where the votes kind of go. So if more younger people voted, would that help, do you think, change the priorities of this government and potentially future governments too?
Absolutely. Politics responds to those who organize and show up, and voting is one of those classic examples of showing up. But the sheer gap between where money is going towards OAS and everything else, OAS is now kind of crowding out anything else we really want to do, whether it is, that supercharged productivity deduction, which is, about $3 billion a year. Remember, OAS is going up $28 billion, or even the $15 billion annual buildup for defense. It can't keep pace with the surge in OAS. And so if we're worried about our deficit, it's going to be time where an older demographic, and we have many of them in our organization, are saying, I have over 6 figures in retirement. I'm willing to take a little less OAS so the savings can be used to eliminate seniors' poverty and help my kids and grandchildren. I think that has to be a cornerstone of the next federal budget.
So were there any glimmers in yesterday's budget at all, Paul? Any nods, any sort of, kind of breadcrumbs, relatively speaking, compared to the OAS numbers?
Well, sure. I mean, there is an extra $1.6 billion in annual spending for housing by 2029, and that is going to help with a GST rebate for some first-time home buyers. It's going to help get us some new housing supply built, and it's going to try and make sure that the taxes charged on those new houses are not quite as high. Those are not unimportant things, but I had been expecting a generational investment in housing, which would have required a scale of capital investment that this budget isn't yet delivering. I think they have intentions to do so. So here's my glimmer of hope. The National Housing Strategy needs to be renewed. It'll come up, I think, in 2027. If they renew the National Housing Strategy, I suspect we'll see more cash flow to housing. So young people and older residents, let's get our support behind the federal government renewing that National Housing Strategy.
That is a huge priority indeed for so many. Paul Kershaw is the founder of Generation Squeeze. Paul, I appreciate the perspective this morning. Thanks for joining us from Ottawa.